Hello everybody, this is Cap here, and I'd like to welcome you to the second video in my Visual Basic tutorial series. In this video we are going to be going over variables. So as you guys can see, I've actually started a new project, and this is a command line project. So if you just open up Visual Studios, go to new project, then Visual Basic, and then command line, and create a new project there, you should come up with something similar to this. And the reason I've done that is because the first few tutorials are going to be a lot simpler to do with a command line. So what is a variable? Well, a variable is exactly how it sounds. It is a value that can vary, and we use variables kind of as a storage unit to temporarily store a value that we're going to need later. And the easiest way, I think, to show new programmers how to use variables is through user input. So say we wanted to create a program that just added two numbers together. Well, we would need variables for this situation because we have no idea what the user is going to input. So to create a variable, we're going to use the dim keyword followed by the name of our variable, which can be whatever you want it to be, anything you want. I'm just going to use num1 followed by the as keyword and then the data type. Now we're going to go over data types later on in this video, so just kind of hold in there if you don't understand what an integer is. We'll go over it. And then num2 also as an integer, and then dim result as an integer. So we've done this so that we can store the first number they enter, which we have no idea what it'll be, the second number they enter, which we also have no idea what that will be, and the result, which, as you can guess, we have no idea what's going to be. So we're going to say console.writeLine, let's say enter a number, and then we're going to say num1. We're going to set num1 equal to whatever the user enters. So we're going to say console.readLine. And then of course we're going to need to get the second one. And we're going to set num2 equal to that. Okay, so then lastly we are going to say that result will equal num1 plus num2. We're going to say console.writeLine. I'm going to just print out result, and then we're going to say console.readKey so that the command prompt doesn't just close after it's done, so that we can actually see what we've done. So as you can see here, we used variables to store the user input because, for one, we don't have any idea what they're going to input, and two, we are going to need to store whatever they input away for this later calculation down here. So that's kind of a simple example of what variables are. So if we run this, let's enter a number. Let's say 4, and then 4 again. And as you can see, it prints out 8. So now that you guys kind of have an idea of what variables are and how they work, we'll go over the variable types or data types. So if you already know data types, then you could probably safely skip this. But if you don't, and you want to learn more specifically what data types are, then just kind of stick around. So we're going to create quite a few variables here. We're just going to say dim thing as bool, or boolean, I guess, and we're going to set it equal to true, because a boolean can only be true or false. Now, that may sound confusing, but later on in the series you'll see why they're so useful. So we'll make a comment, which you can do with the apostrophe. Anything after the apostrophe is ignored by the compiler, so it's just for us to read as people. Let's say can be true or false. Man. So we'll go with thing2, and this one will be a byte. And we will just store the value of 100 in there. And to kind of speed this up a little bit, I will copy from my little lesson plan over here the description of byte, since I made a nifty little lesson plan. So bytes can be assigned a value between 0 and 255, and they only take up 1 byte of memory. So let's go dim thing 3. This one will be S byte. So S byte basically stands for a signed byte. So we take part of the bits that were being used, sign 12 there, for this entire positive value, and using some of them so that we can store negative values as well. So you can assign an S byte a value between negative 128 and positive 127, and it still takes up the same amount of memory. The next one here is a char, which just name it thing4. It's a char. So a char stores a Unicode character, such as A, and it takes up 2 bytes of space. Say dim thing 5, and the next one up here is decimal, and decimals can store can store numbers that have a decimal place, hence their name. So we can say 34, dot 12. And it takes up 16 bytes of memory. Say dim thing 6. Next one up here is a double. Now, double, like a decimal, is used to store numbers with decimal places, but decimal is much more precise. So if you need very precise calculations, then you should probably use a decimal over a double, which doubles only use up half this memory as a decimal. So you can sacrifice precision for memory here, if you so desire. So thing 7, and the next one is integer, which we've already seen this as in our example. So the integer, or an integer, stores whole numbers. It can store, pretty large whole numbers. We'll say 5,000. And I'll just copy this over here so you guys can see the range of values that it can store. So you can see it can store any value between negative 2,147,483,648 and 2,147,483,647, and it takes up 4 bytes of space. And if this is a little overwhelming, that's okay, because at the end here I'll go over why there are so many, or go into more of an explanation of why there are so many. The next one is uint, which is an unsigned integer, which basically means we're taking the bits that we used for the negative values in the integer, and we're using all of those so that we can store a larger positive number. So a u integer can store a value between 0 and 4 billion. Instead of going from negative 2 billion to positive 2 billion, it just goes from 0 to 4 billion. So we're using all of the bits to store positive numbers. And let's see here, the last ones here are shorts. So we'll just set that equal to 200. And shorts can store a whole number value between negative 32,768 and positive 32,767. So they're between a byte and an integer. And the last one we're going to go over here is thing 10, and it is a u short. So as with the u integer, it's basically an unsigned short, which basically means that we've taken all of the bits that we used for the negative numbers, and we're putting them all towards storing a larger positive number. So it can store between 0 and 65,535, and it takes up 2 bytes. So I know this can be a little bit overwhelming, and this was a pretty dull and a little bit stressful tutorial, but it's one of those things that you have to get through in order to understand the upcoming tutorials. So the reason that there are so many data types that seem the same is basically to manage your memory, to better manage your memory. Because if you have a small number that's going to be between 1 and 20, you don't want to use an integer which takes up 4 bytes of memory just to store a value that's between 1 and 10. You would want to use a byte, because a byte would have more than enough memory for something like that. And if you're going to have something that's a little bit larger than a byte, or value that's a little bit larger than a byte, that can go up into the thousands, but not really into the hundreds of thousands or millions, then you could use a short. But if you're going to have a larger number than that, which can go up into the millions or maybe even billions, you can use an integer or a u integer. Now there's also a long which is even larger than an integer, but you probably won't come across very many times when you'll need that much space. But just know that it's out there. So that's pretty much all I wanted to cover in this video. Thank you guys for being, patient through this video. I know it's pretty stressful and not too exciting, but I would like to thank you for watching. If you guys like this, please go ahead and hit the like button. And if you've seen a few of my videos and really like them and want to stay up to date on when I post new ones, you can go ahead and subscribe. And once again, I'd like to thank you for watching, and I will see you guys in the next video.